G'day everyone, Artist Wayne here and welcome back to episode 2 of my Mad Max 2 The Road Warrior Interceptor 3D print. And I have learned a lot in this past week. I've learned things like not all filaments are created equal.
Yes, as I endeavour to create the world's most accurate 1/8 scale Mad Max Interceptor from the Australian blockbuster film Mad Max 2 The Road Warrior on my Prusa MK4S 3D printer, which I assembled myself. You might remember that my 3D printed parts were looking like, well, for want of a better word, were looking like shit. And I was having to do a lot of post-production work to bring them up to scratch. So imagine my excitement when I no longer had to work so hard on my 3D printed parts. Oh, look what's come in the mail today, it's filament! Because of this fantastic filament which has changed my life. So let's pick up where we left off in episode 1 as I get the bonnet guards and Concorde front of the mighty Black on Black Pursuit Special ready for their first coat of black paint. And as for the Interceptor's bonnet, well, I needed to drill out the bonnet locks so I could make more detailed ones using the sculpting putty which had now arrived in the mail.
You basically mix part A with B, it's like a plasticine, and it takes about 5 minutes to go hard.
Now I purchased this sculpting putty because, like I said, I want to make the most detailed movie replica Interceptor model ever made in the entire world. So I may need to sculpt some things that are on the inside of Max's car. Things like an old enamel lid, an old air cleaner, a crowbar, and a small bucket. However, I'm not sure I've mentioned this, but wife Jackie and I have been travelling around this great country of ours, Australia, in our caravan for the past 2.5 years, and we will be returning home shortly. And upon our return, I will be searching for some old CDs that I had that contained hundreds of 3D objects. You see, years ago when I was creating 3D computer generated stuff, long before 3D printing was a thing, I had CD libraries containing everyday mundane objects, and I am hoping that I may be able to import those files for 3D print. Anyway, today it was time to paint, so using a spray can I was laying on some matte black and seeing how these body parts I had worked so hard on would come up this time.
I'm spraying the matte black enamel and I'm just getting a slight reaction to some of the parts. I think I might have put it on a little too thick in my haste to get the job done. Even though it was a terrible day, I got all these pieces spray painted with matte black. Hopefully I get a nice warm sunny day tomorrow and I can give these one coat of shiny clear gloss. Right, I've got all the pieces sprayed with a couple of coats of clear gloss. We're out in the sheer sunlight and I am going to be brutally honest with each piece because they all in one way or another have a few blemishes. Now, I'm not fussed because this is the Mad Max 2 car and basically this whole entire car will be covered in dust. But you will see the shiny body beneath it and that'll give it a great contrast. So there'll be patches of beautiful gloss paint. Out of all the car parts, the bonnet was the worst for print wise. And because I started so many layers of paint because I was trying to work out a great method, I do have one major blemish in that bonnet. Now, again, you're not going to see any of these marks and things, and they'll add to the model because The car needs to be beaten and scratched and marked and scuffed. So, like I said, I'm not worried. So when my filament finally arrives, I will be able to print the other half of the engine bay and get all these parts attached and assembled.
So armed with a new roll of filament, I proceeded to print the other side of the engine bay. And I did it using the Prusa slicer in normal settings. My print time had come down from over 24 hours for the other side to 17.5 hours. But as soon as my MK4S started printing, I could tell the print was going to be a lot sharper. And all I could put it down to was the different filament. And if that was the case, well, I would be doing all my 3D print shopping with InkStation. In fact, I had some very special items waiting for me on the Central Coast that I would be picking up this weekend. I had ordered 2 Sunlu Filler Dryer S1 Plus 3D printing mates, which would allow me to dry while printing to improve my 3D models.
Well, the printer's been going for a while now. We're at 40%, but this filament, I mean, that print looks sharp. Totally sharp. I get the feeling that this is much better filament. But I won't know for certain until tomorrow. I cannot wait to get this off the printer. Just have a go at how clean that is. That is just super, super clean. The surface is brilliant. So, different filaments make a huge difference. I am in love with this filament. Well, the print is finished. And just look at the beautiful lines in that. Look at that. Filament makes a huge difference. I'll clean that up and glue it, get the front end together and go from there.
Not only was the print sharper, but thank goodness it was easier to clean. Because remember when I said I found something in the farm shed?
Check it out. This is what I found in the farm shed. So I'm giving this a go. See if it'll clean up the back of the prints. Wow, doesn't really make a dent.
So down to the Central Coast I went to pick up an important package that would make my 3D printing life so much easier.
Black filament, clear filament. And 2 filament dryers, whatever they are.
Now I could compare the last piece I printed to my previously printed engine bay, which incidentally I thought was great. However, it was now like comparing apples to oranges. I was now super excited to move forward, and I couldn't wait to return to the farm to continue printing and trying out the silver and clear filaments. I could also now assemble the left and right sides of the engine bay, enabling me to attach the guards and the Concorde front.
That'll go together. Glue that. I'll put filament. Now the filament goes in these holes here, but they are quite big, so I found this in the farm shed. So it's a little bit bigger than the normal filament. I think it's whippersnipper cord, and I'm going to use that for gluing these 3 struts. I'm just getting the guards placed. Let's make sure everything goes okay before I need to work out just how to clamp them on slightly to get a better fit. and try and get this whole front end together. Then I can print the headlights, try and do the clear glass, and yeah, I can start painting the front. That's what I'm looking forward to. I raided Mum's house and got a whole heap of matte acrylic for the dirt and dust and post-apocalyptic filth.
The clamps I was using were a bit of overkill, but hey, you've got to use what you have on hand. Once I return home, I'll have more appropriate clamping methods available. But until then, this would have to do. Of course, whilst all this assembly work was going on, I was continuing to print.
Prusa slicer. I'm using normal mode, and we're at a 1.5 hour print. So we'll see how the bonnet grill or the washer wiper grill goes.
After printing so many large pieces that seemed to take forever, it felt unusually weird to finally be printing something that only took an hour and a half. And I was keen to see how the filament went on a piece that needed to look smooth. And I have to say, I could not be more excited with the result. With prints like these, my workload would definitely become easier. So as I continued assembling what I had already printed, I took my silver filament roll out of its box.
Lots and lots of work tonight. I've just printed the headlight boxes in silver filament, and now I need to print some headlight glass. And I don't think the model has that, so I will have to work something out.
Unfortunately, there was no headlight glass to print when it came to the model, and the housing to the headlight was way too small compared with the XC GXL headlights the Mad Max Interceptor has. Anyway, for now I had my work cut out for me, just printing the clear filament. With a print time of only 30 minutes, I didn't have to wait long to see my results.
Printing out the headlight covers. Those headlight covers that I just printed out, I'll use those as the actual headlight glass. And then the Concorde front covers, I am trying to print those 1mm thick, so that they should be much clearer. We'll see how that goes. Alright, I printed these last night, and as you can see, they're much clearer. They're the lenses, the front Concorde lenses. They are much clearer than what I first printed out using clear filament. And the reason that they're clearer is because I unlocked the scale ratio, and instead of having the lens 3.5mm thick, I made it 1mm thick.
Yes, I had significantly reduced the print lines and made the lens so much more clearer. Of course, there's always room for improvement, so I would have to see how these lenses looked when on the finished model. As for those first thicker lenses I printed, well, I cut them down and glued them to the headlight surround where they would sit behind these Concorde lenses and would hopefully look like XC headlights. But being the perfectionist I am, I wasn't happy with the lenses on the Concorde front, so I tried again.
I'm in Prusa Slicer and I've sliced the headlights. I've sliced them down, and I've also unlocked the scale factors and made them 0.5mm thick.
Printing with clear filament is definitely going to be a challenge, especially when it comes to printing the windscreen of the mighty Mad Max Interceptor. So I'll need to do some research on how not to get those print lines for a much more clear result. Anyhow, my Mad Max 2 Road Warrior Interceptor front end was now assembled. An exciting milestone for me because I can finally start painting. And because I'm still not living at home and I don't have access to my airbrush, I would need to come up with a great idea on how to paint all the layers of dust on the Pursuit Special. And I did this by using watered down acrylic paint and a sponge. I would use this very subtle technique to build up layers and layers of thin paint, which should hopefully give the illusion of dust. And as the layers build up and overlap one another, this process might even give me a better weathered look than if I were to use an airbrush. As for reference, I had taken loads of screenshots from the Mad Max 2 film of the mighty Road Warrior Interceptor, loaded them onto a big ass 55-inch TV, and I just went to town. Now the main thing with a painting process like this is to resist the urge of applying the layers of paint too thick, because that age-old adage, less is more, is very important. So starting with titanium white as my base coat, I added 3 or 4 layers, before moving on to the colour sand with a little bit of yellow ochre. And I continued adding layers until I applied Scarlet Lake mixed with cadmium yellow, which would give me that rich Australian outback dusty look. I followed closely all the reference photos from the film as I endeavour to accurately paint every scratch and mark in what is arguably one of the greatest film cars to ever hit the screen. Not to mention one hell of a model from Gambody, which I'll chuck a link for in the description of this video. Using layers of watered down acrylic gave me the perfect look of a car that has been out in the wind and rain of an Australian post-apocalyptic outback. Now the movie car has quite a lot of thick, caked on orange dust all over the guards, doors and rear quarter panels, and especially the rear of the car and wheels. So to create that look, probably when the entire car has been assembled, I'll use a light layer of wood putty with the acrylic colour on top. That should give me the perfect texture. Well, that's it for episode 2, folks. Don't forget to check in the description for a link to this fantastic Gambody 3D printable Mad Max model. And talking about Gambody, I just purchased another 2 models, which will become my next huge 3D printing project. And I might reveal what they are in the next episode. And talking about the next episode, I will be painting and assembling the mighty Interceptor's GT motor and getting the rear chassis all sorted. So until then, I'm Artist Wayne Dowsand, and happy 3D printing, everyone.